Hey, seventh graders. We're here today to learn how to make a graph in Google Sheets. So we're going to review all the different parts of making a graph, but we're going to give you the tools to do this online. And this is a really important tool because a lot of graphs get made in lots of different jobs where you have to know how to make it online. So let's make one together. So let's say, as you look at this, we're done with our Clover experiment, and this is the data we got. I know it's not the same data that all the classes got, but we're going to use my class's data to look and see, hey, what do we do? We've got all of this information, and we've done a good job, and on the right-hand side, you can see that we've got the average. And so when we make a graph, sometimes it's important to put all of the data on the graph, and sometimes you've done the work of doing some data analysis. You've got the mean here. Maybe that's just the only thing we want to graph. So we're going to look at what we do with that. So maybe for some assignments, we will have graphs where everything kind of started. But what if you wanted to make one on your own? The easy thing to do is just open a new tab in your browser. So I've gone up here, I've clicked the plus button, and I'm sent to my home Google search. And then because I'm in my Google account, you can see my picture up here in the upper right. I can click on the Google Apps. That's these 9 tiles. And if I click on that, it gives me all the different apps that Google has supplied for free. And one of those tiles is Google Sheets. Now, some of you at home may have different programs, things like Apple Numbers or Microsoft Excel, and those are all great programs, but we're going to do this in Google Sheets because we know you as an Anoka Hennepin student all have access to that. So let's look at how to make a graph in Google Sheets. As Google Sheets loads up, I'm going to get my camera out of the way. In the lower right-hand corner, it's going to show you a list of all of the Google Sheets that you have made, and maybe you haven't made any. I've made a lot of them. And if you wanted to make a new sheet, there's a plus button in the lower right-hand corner. And when you hover over it, it'll turn into a little pencil, and it says create a new spreadsheet. So we're going to click on that. And that's going to open up a new sheet that we can work on. None of the cells in the sheet have been filled in. I'm going to start up here and make sure that I put a title name on here. So let's call this Clover Graph. And then we need to now make our data table. Now, we have a data table filled in. This happens to be in Google Slides. That's great. And if you're good at copying and pasting, you could do that. I'm going to choose not to fill in all of the data points because we really don't want that. I'll show you what it looks like later, but I'm going to just choose to fill in and make my own data table with just the stuff that I need. So what do we need when we make a graph? Well, the first thing we need is we need our independent variable, which is going to be in the top left. So that's going to be the amount of water in milliliters. I'm going to copy that in. And if you're not good at copying and pasting, you could certainly type it out. But that is our first thing that we need. We need to know, what are we really comparing? And we had 5, 10, and 20 milliliters were the different amounts that we were measuring. So underneath that, I'm going to type 5, 10, and 20. And I have those labeled with the units right there. Then our dependent variable. Our dependent variable was the number of days that it took to sprout through the soil. That's how we were measuring germination. So we will type in here number of days until germination. And our data that we got in my class, the averages were 3.8 for 5, 3.2 for 10, and 3 for 20. So we can type in 3.8, 3.2, and 3. Ooh, 3. All right, now we have a quick data table. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to click on the top left, and I'm going to highlight the whole thing. So I'm kind of going to click and drag so that it's all highlighted in light blue. And the next step, there's two ways to do it. I can click on this box at the top. It says Insert Chart. Google calls their graphs charts. I don't know if that's kind of a business world thing. I prefer the term graph. That's more of a science term. But that's, if you're looking for, well, where is the graph button? It's really chart here. If you can't find it, or maybe this is hidden from you, you can also go to Insert, and you can find Insert Chart here. But most of you will probably, oh, and I lost my highlight. Most of you will probably just click on this icon. And when you do that, it's going to generate a graph for you. Now, right away, you say, well, am I done? And the answer is, well, no, we need to fix some things. It's going to do a pretty good job. First of all, it's made a line graph, and we have to decide, is that the type of graph that we should really be making? Sometimes, yes, Google Sheets will pick correctly, but other times it's going to say, wait, that is not really what we're comparing. So we need to make line graphs when we're looking at change over time, but we're looking at change in different amounts of milliliters. So this really shouldn't be a line graph. So the first thing we need to do is pick what type of graph this is going to be. And there's lots of choices. In this class, we've basically covered line graphs and bar graphs, and we've also mentioned pie graphs, which would be for percentages. And so a bar graph, or here it is called a column chart, would be what we want. There, that looks a lot better. But we're not done yet, because we can clean this up and make it look good, and we want to make sure that all the parts are in place. So nothing else on the main setup page really needs to be changed. However, we're going to go over to Customize, and we're going to go through and make sure everything looks good. I like to start at the top and go from the first set of options down. So the first thing is chart style, and this is more like what's the background color, little details. But one thing you can do is you can make it 3D. I don't really love 3D in this one because it's nice and simple and easy to read. But if that's something that works for you, that's just fine. You can change the background color so that everything is light blue or something like that. We don't really need any of that. Here's the important one. Under the spot where it says chart and axis titles, we need to make sure what it says and all the titles are correct. So it's trying to guess what this is, but let's fix that. So we're going to start with the title. And actually, if we're going to make a graph, let's go through in the order of how we build a house. So let's start at the bottom. So we'll get to the title in a little bit. At the bottom of the house, we have the independent variable, which is on the horizontal or x-axis. And we're going to look, and it says amount of water in milliliters. And it has 5, 10, and 20. And here, the program's worked out well. That's what we want. But if it guessed wrong or it put in extra things, then we could edit it. Maybe I want to capitalize water. I don't know why I would, but if I did, Well, then guess what? Now it shows up. I can make it bold so it stands out nice and neat. I could decide, really, I want that in dark blue, and anything else, if I needed to center it or make it off to one side or another, I can change that. All right, that looks great. Now, let's click on the options of what we're going to edit, and let's go to the y-axis, which is the vertical axis title. This is where our dependent variable is. Well, if I'm going to capitalize those other things, here we have number of days until germination. I'm going to choose to change how that is worded. That would be right. I'm going to make it germination, germination time. And then I'm going to put in that my units were days. It's important that we make sure we have our units for our results labeled on the y-axis. And I'm going to make that bold, and I'm also going to make it dark blue so it stands out. All right, so we've got our floor, we've got our walls, and now we need our roof. So let's go to the title. This title is kind of wordy. It does have some important aspects. Let's clean this up so it's a little bit easier to read. A good title is going to tell us what our independent and our dependent variables are and what is the graph really about. So it's about germination time with different amounts of water. And I'm going to choose to make that bold, and I'm going to choose to center it. So I'm going to click here and put it in the center, and it looks like it kind of blends into the background. So let's make that dark purple. All right, we are doing good. So what else do we need to do? Let's see some options. We've got our series, we've got our data. Sometimes you're going to have a key, and if you have a key, it's labeled as a legend, and you can choose where you put the key. So if we had all of the trials, and I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. If we had all of the trials and we wanted to show each of those, we might have to have a key. Our horizontal axis looks good. Our vertical axis. Here I can decide, sometimes your data will go right up to the top line. So if I decided I wanted my data to go from 0 to 5, I could set the maximum value here to be 5. And now it would look like that. I can also change how the grid lines look, and I can change the minimum value and things like that. But right now, we're looking good. So if I wanted to change what do the ticks look like on the side, maybe it's a little easier. And I can change, okay, it's a little easier for me to see where they are at. Lots of little tiny options. The main thing we're looking for when you're making a graph on Google Sheets is, do you know how to set the x-axis, the y-axis, and the title, and make sure your data is represented correctly? So this would be a fantastic graph. If I was going to export this, I could click on this, and I would maybe be able to publish this chart. I could copy it and then paste it into, say, a slideshow. So I could say copy chart, go to my slideshow, go to an open page, and then Command V, paste, and there it is. I've got my graph right in my slideshow ready to present and share with people. Now, we chose just to show the average data, and I want to show you what it looks like if we were to show all of the data. So if I took just this exact spreadsheet, this data table, and put it in, it would end up looking like this. Now, that's a nice looking graph. There's a lot of colored bars. We had to put a key on the right side. But notice that when you put all of the data on the graph and the averages get a little bit lost. And so I honestly think that this graph more clearly shows the differences between my 5, 10, and 20 mil data than this one. That one looks nice. I made it 3D, um, and it has lots of colors, but it's actually a little bit more confusing for the person who's reading it to make sense out of it. So I hope this helps, and I hope as you try to tackle doing one of these yourselves, you can kind of follow along with the steps I did, um, and certainly let your teacher know if this is something you need help with. Good luck.